It is the past few days, the past 2 days, we've seen a huge barrage of Russian missiles, of Kinzhal missiles, which are hypersonic missiles, of drones, all through Ukraine. They've hit targets in Kyiv. They've hit targets in the west of the country. So certainly this has been a really huge attack over the past 48 hours.
7 people were reported killed, but also power and water has been cut. How many Ukrainians do you think this will affect?
This is likely to affect a huge number of Ukrainians. We're hearing from on the ground that roughly 50% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been affected by these strikes. And they actually very specifically targeted energy infrastructure just a couple of days after Ukraine's energy grid said that it was getting energy supplies back up and running and reliability was improving. So certainly this is going to be very difficult times for Ukrainians, particularly as we start heading into some of those more cold months.
Well, neighbouring countries such as Poland and even Moldova have reported being affected.
Indeed, and Poland in particular, obviously, as does Moldova, border Ukraine. So there are effects, there are flow-on effects that happen when you damage energy infrastructure that is connected to energy infrastructure in other countries. Ukraine, quite famously, a few years ago, decoupled its energy grid from Russia, but is still now, as a result of that, connected to various countries on the EU. And so, and on the European side in general, even European countries outside of the EU. So certainly this attack is going to affect and reverberate beyond Ukraine.
And Zoya, what do you make of the timing of this attack?
It's very calculated. We had Ukraine's Independence Day celebrations over the weekend on Saturday. We've also had the incursion of Ukraine into Russian territory around Kursk. And certainly the sources who we speak with in Kyiv have been waiting for some sort of response from Vladimir Putin. It was always going to be something significant because that is such a huge incursion into Russian territory. So this is certainly, the timing is designed to send a message on Independence Day. It's designed to send a message in response to Kursk.
And what does it reveal about Moscow's strategy at this stage of the war? Do you think it'll step up attacks more from now?
So some of these attacks have very specifically targeted hotels in Kyiv. We know that several journalists have been injured and one Reuters person has been killed. Another one is in hospital in a critical condition. There is this sense that perhaps Westerners are being targeted as well as Ukrainians as retribution for the fact that Western weapons are being used in Russian territory now. Ukraine finally was able to get permission from several of its partners to use some of those long-range missiles to take out targets in Russian territory. So that message is definitely designed to show strength from Putin at a time when he certainly displayed weakness as a result of this very significant incursion into the Kursk region.
So what is the state of play in Russia with Ukraine's incursion? Does that continue?
It is continuing, and just this morning, the governor of Belgorod has announced that several more parts of that region have been labeled essentially no-go zones, so no one is allowed to enter those zones. It's definitely continuing on. We're seeing Ukraine manage to capture more territory around Kursk, around Belgorod. So this has certainly surprised both Russia and Ukraine in some ways. So it was not known that this was going to be a huge offensive, not widely known anyway. Western partners were also quite surprised by Ukraine's incursion, and we are seeing some pretty significant gains. The question now is, of course, what happens next? Will Russia be able to reinforce some of its defenses to stop Ukraine from getting further into Russian territory? Will they try to do a pincer move and block some of those Ukrainian troops in Russian territory, or will Ukraine decide that it might pull back? These are all open questions and we don't know the answer at this point.
Well, Ukraine's president has used the latest attack on Ukraine as an opportunity to appeal to Western nations for more help. Which countries are most likely to respond?
He is appealing to the US. He's appealing also to Western partners like Germany, Poland. In particular, Poland has scrambled some of its jets to try to ensure that Polish territory is not affected by Russia's strikes. What the Ukrainians are asking for is for Poland to actually shoot down drones and also other missiles over Ukrainian territory. And the Poles have thus far refused to do that. But this is something Ukrainians are seeking. They're also seeking more permission from their various Western allies to be able to use some of those Western-supplied weapons on Russian territory, deeper into Russian territory. They argue that the Russians are staging bases from within Russian territory to strike Ukrainian civilian targets, to strike Ukrainian infrastructure and hotels. And what they would like to do is to be able to shoot down, or rather to sort of prevent the Russians from being able to safely fire from those sorts of places. So this is part of the reason Zelensky has given for the Russian incursion. What he's hoping to achieve is a degree of a buffer zone around Russian territory so that those weapons are further from Ukrainian infrastructure and Ukrainian civilians. And that is something that's a key ask for Zelensky, to be able to strike deeper into Russia so that they can take out some of those airfields where these strikes are coming from.
Zoya, always great to get your views. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.